Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Pitt Post-Game show here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're your Pitt beat writers, Chris Carter, Stephen Thompson here, still in Pittsburgh. We did make the trip to Tallahassee, but Pitt loses its third straight ACC game to Florida State, 82-70, dropping to 3-3 in the conference, 12-5 on the year. And a lot of alarm bells ringing after this one, especially after the way this game ended. Pitt, we'll get into like a lot of different things that happened. We'll talk more about the post-game activities that happened where there was a lot of shouting and shoving going on from both sides at the end of the game. But Steven, this was a team that looked pretty well set to be one of the top contenders in the ACC just about a week and a half ago. And now all of a sudden they've fallen into the middle of the pack, and they're going to have to do a lot of fighting in the second half of this season to push through the ACC and earn an NCAA tournament bid.
Yeah, just an ugly 3-game stretch for Pitt, starting with that blowout loss at Duke, and then a couple of games in which they got kind of out-physicaled in some ways, and where, they just, the nature of which they lost looked uglier. I think, Duke, you kind of understand that loss. I mean, Duke might, has a great argument to be the number one team in the country right now, but, losing the way that they did, getting beat on the board so badly, and just especially in this game against Florida State, kind of coming out looking like they weren't prepared for what their opponent was throwing at them. I think that is part of what makes this feel like an even bigger or deeper losing streak than it might actually be, which is only 3 games, but still doesn't feel great and doesn't look great either.
I agree with you there. As always, we give you our good, bad, and our ugly. We always start with the good, and it's tough to find some goods in this game when you lose 82-70. I'll start with my good, though, Steven, and I'll talk about Jaylen Lowe in the second half. We'll talk about Jaylen Lowe in the first half because that was a problem. But as he has several times this year, Jaylen Lowe steps up in the second half and finds some sort of extra gear that he kicks into. He scored 20 of his 22 points in the second half, shot 6 of 10 in the second half. Hit a big 3-pointer, hit 7 of 8 free throws. He was getting to the free throw line very well. I had 4 assists in the second half, including several ones that set up the guy that you're going to talk about for your good. But I was impressed by how Jaylen Lowe handled the second half of the game. I think the problem for Pitt was it just didn't come fast enough, and there were too many other problems that compounded with that issue to win this game.
Yeah, the 4 assists to only 2 turnovers was the biggest part of the turnaround, and probably the biggest reason why Pitt was able to get back into this game. Going from, I believe he only had 2 assists to 8 turnovers in the first half, but then he had 5 assists. 1 assist. I was reading this all wrong. 1 assist to 6 turnovers in the first half, then going to 4 assists to 2 turnovers. That was huge, and like you said, most of those assists went to the guy who's my good, and that's Jorge Diaz-Graham. He was the biggest reason that Pitt was able to get back into this game, going 4 of 5 from 3-point range 4 of 4 from 3-point range in the second half, scoring 15 of his 17 points. A lot of those came on drive and kickouts to the corner from whether from Jaylen Lowe. He's making a big case for himself to play more.
He is.
He's had some really nice flashes over the past few games in limited minutes, and it hasn't always been the shooting. He shot it really well this year in limited minutes, but he's done some other nice stuff defensively. I mean, he had a sequence in this game where he had a block on one end and then came flying in for an offensive rebound where he got free throws and then followed it up with a 3. So, Jorge, as Jeff Capel told us, still was kind of recovering from that preseason injury he had during the summer, kind of getting back to feeling like himself. And it looks like he's really kind of blossoming as he's starting to get healthier and get some more minutes under his belt.
No, I agree. I think he is figuring some things out, and that's a good thing for Pitt because they need people to come off the bench, and they need 3-point shooting. They're supposed to be a really good 3-point shooting team, and that's hurt them in some recent games. They shot 38% from deep in this game, 8 out of 21. They wanted to get that better for sure. Let's talk about our bads in this game. I'll leave with my bad, and it's the first half turnovers. Pitt had a season high 17 turnovers in this game. That you can't have that. And I get that Florida State played a physical defense, and again, for those turnovers, 14 of them happened in the first half. Like, that's just, you can't do that and then expect to win a game. I thought it was remarkable that Pitt was only down 5 points after that being a problem. I think that was a testament to Pitt's first half defense because it was taking away a lot of the things Florida State was trying to do. It was forcing them to have to hit from outside. Jameer Watkins did that, and that's practically why Florida State had a lead. But that ultimately doomed them in this game. I think that if they had come out and they limit those turnovers and they come out with a first half lead, and they and some of those turnovers that they got in the second half happened early, and that led to when Florida State busted out a 10-0 run that kind of stopped Pitt from trying to take over the second half. I think this leads to a problem that Pitt is starting to see in more and more of their contests. But Pitt has to come out in the first half stronger with understanding what teams are trying to do, trying to take away what you do, especially with the guards. You have to know by now there's certain ways that Jaylen Lowe is going to get attacked. There's certain ways Ishmael Leggett's going to get attacked, and Pitt has to counter that faster, I think, in these games. Because Pitt's been a great second half adjustment team, I think, several times this year. They have found ways to figure things out on offense and to get counter what defenses are doing to them. But as you and I talked about in a lot of those games, when you start playing against those more like those ACC teams that are closer to you in talent wise, that's not always going to cut it for you. You need to make those adjustments earlier, or coming out and be the team that forces the other team that makes the adjustments.
Yeah, and I put a lot of those turnovers. Obviously, Jaylen Lowe had 8 of them. I don't have in front of me how many Ishmael Leggett had, but I put a lot of those turnovers on them. Even if it wasn't a turnover, it was a missed shot that was forced when there were maybe other shooters potentially on the perimeter, or guys that they could kick it out to. You start watching this game back a little bit, and you realize that the Pitt's best looks, the vast majority of them, came actually when Ish Leggett or Damian Dunn or Jaylen Lowe were driving into the teeth of this defense, being patient, and then looking for someone else to pass out to. It's a little disappointing that in a game where you're able to get Damian Dunn back into the starting lineup and you feel like he's starting to get a little bit healthier, where you have these 3 veteran guards that this team is supposed to be built around, that they look uncharacteristically sloppy. I think they had more turnovers in the first half than they average per game for this season. So it's just unfortunate because it is 3 of your most experienced guys, and it's 3 of the guys that supposed to be stars for this team that really kind of let you down in this game.
Absolutely. I think that's a big part of the problem that you have in this game, Steven. So when you have to find that. What was your bad from this game?
Yeah, it was the fact that Pitt got out rebounded for a 3rd straight game. I know they've, especially against Duke and in the case of Duke and Florida State, those are long and athletic teams that rebound the ball really well, but Pitt is supposed to be one of these teams that has, length itself and has athleticism and is supposed to be able to hold its own on the boards. It was one of the reasons why they got off to such a good start, is they were able to control the glass, and it was just not good enough again today. And I think, in a vacuum, being out rebounded by, by 6 by a Florida State team that is particularly good on the boards and has so much length and athleticism. They were only down 2 in offensive rebounding and down 1 in second chance points. So, it's a big improvement off what they did against Louisville, but I think it's the fact that it is the 3rd straight game we are getting out rebounded like this. You got to start showing some pride, and you got to start showing some more energy. It's got to be more of a collective effort, I think, to rebound together. That was the other thing. Ishmael Leggett had 6 rebounds today, but, Cam Corhen had 9 and Zach Austin had 5, but you just didn't see, I think, enough Pitt guys getting their nose in there and rebounding. Damian Dunn only having 1 rebound, that's not really going to cut it. If you're sliding him in for Jorge Diaz-Graham in the starting lineup, and he has to be able to rebound, he has to be able to make up the difference for a guy who's, 6'11" or 7 foot. So, just need a little bit more of a collective effort, I think. Just not good enough on the boards for a 3rd straight game.
Agreed. And before we get to ugly, I think Damian Dunn is a guy that also has to step up. I know he's coming back from an injury, and he's trying to figure things out. But yet, 0 of 8 from the floor for him, 2 points. Committed 2 turnovers as well. He hasn't been that guy since he's returned just yet that could be the difference maker for Pitt. He had that ejection, that technical foul that ejected him against Duke. I didn't think he did enough against Louisville. And then this was arguably this was his worst performance of the season in this one. He was brought in to be that calming presence for the Panthers as the 6th-year veteran guard who could take on tough moments. And there were several times where I thought he could have been that defensive guy that slowed things down for Pitt. especially in the second half. And there were just times he was just getting beat, not making the right plays. That's something that has to change for Pitt. If they want to be, they're a guard heavy team. They're supposed to be a team that wins in the backcourt a lot. And, Jaylen Lowe won a lot. I think Ishmael Leggett was able to do some good things as well. But ultimately, you need the three of them to really come through as a unit. But let's get to the ugly here, because this kind of became the story of the game. I think afterwards was I'll start with my ugly, and it was the post-game handshakes where everything looks like it's going fine. Like when you're looking on TV, Malone Brown's shaking hands with the other coaches and everything's looking fine there. But then a group of Florida State players kind of rush up on Cam Corhen, who, of course, Pitt Junior Center, transferred from Florida State last season, and they were yapping at him a lot. And Cam Corhen is kind of just like, he jaws back a little bit, tries to walk away, and Jeff Capel kind of steps in between him. Is like, "Hey, that's all right. Everything's calm." He kind of tries to de-escalate the situation. And then I think it was Alir Malouk. He got in Jeff Capel's face and kind of got really close to him, and Jeff Capel tries to back him up off him, and then all of a sudden it just gets loud. Both sides start barking at each other. Pitt's barking at them, Florida State's barking at them, and you see Brandon Cummings having to get held back, and it's just it got really ugly fast. And then Pitt's getting booed off the court, and then they just look like sore losers for the coming off that situation. And sure, maybe Florida State was barking and saying some things, but you know what? You got beat soundly in their house. They're gonna talk trash. Cam Corhen's a former player there, and maybe they said some foul things that weren't cool, but you got to get out of there with your dignity intact. And now everyone's looking like, man, Pitt just looks like some sore losers after a bad loss on the road, and I think that's an ugly situation for a Pitt team that's on a 3-game losing streak right now.
Yeah, just kind of adding insult to injury. It's not anything that Pitt needs to be involved in right now. Like you said, there's no outcome when you kind of, I don't know, when that becomes the scene after a post game handshake line like that. Nothing good comes out of there, especially if you're the team that loses. I mean, yep. I don't think Florida State comes out of here with their noses completely clean either. But if you're talking about Pitt, I mean, it just, again, I can't put it any more succinctly than you did. I mean, makes you look like a sore loser. This becomes the story of the game. And yeah, it's a perfect fit for ugly, because that was ugly. It was a bad scene to leave people with at the end of that game.
I agree there. What's your ugly from this situation?
The fact that Pitt's on a 3-game losing streak. You have to go back a whole year to the last time that Pitt lost 2 in a row. That we looked up after that Louisville game, and 3 in a row is a completely foreign feeling. With that in mind, so and just 2 of these were games that Pitt, you think you could have convinced yourself going into them. Pitt was the better team there, and it's just allowing what happened in Durham, an ugly loss there, to kind of snowball into something bigger than that. So this Pitt team has been resilient for most of the year. They've been resilient for most of the past 2 and 3 years, but the past 3 games, past week and a half, they have not been very resilient, and their efforts following up that Duke game just have not been up to snuff, and they have not looked like a team that is desperate to get back on track. So the road ahead doesn't get any easier. Clemson might be the second best team in the ACC, and they're coming to Pittsburgh on Saturday afternoon. Pitt has a lot to fix in not a lot of time, and they're going to have to dig deep right now. They're going to have to dig deep in a way that they haven't in a little bit. And so my ugly is this losing streak, a losing streak that's really unfamiliar and will feel really unfamiliar to this team, but there's no easy way out. You got to beat a good team to end this losing streak.
Agreed. Clemson's a tough team, and Pitt's supposed to be a tough team. And I think they've been tough several times this year. They've overcome adversity. We've seen them win on the road in tough environment, and we've seen them come back in big games. But they have to be able to show that throughout the season. If they don't, this is going to be another year where they're going to be staring up at Selection Sunday and hoping to be a bubble team. There. This is supposed to be a Pitt team that was better than that, and maybe they can be. I still think that they have a lot of potential in this team. I still think they can reel off a lot of wins, but these were 2 of the wins I thought that they'd be able to get at home against Louisville and on the road against Florida State. That didn't come to fruition. Now You got a tough Clemson team coming to town. This is one of the games I was like, I don't know about this one because how Clemson just has seemed to have Pitt's number over the past few years. And you still got to play Louisville again on the road. You still got a lot of other tough contests down the stretch, and you're not playing good basketball right now. Teams are taking you out of your rhythm, and it seems like if you're a tough physical team with length, you can be a team that disrupts the Pitt Panthers, especially with their guard play. Jeff Capel's got to help them find answers. And again, I don't think it's a lack of game plan. I think that they have the game plan in place. Again, Jaylen Lowe and Ishmael, Leggett, and a lot of those turnovers you saw them driving or where they were driving to the paint and getting a lot of attention. There's guys in the perimeter that are open. There's clearly a plan, but they have to be able to execute the plan. I think that that's where sometimes the heat of the game might get to these guys, and they have to be able to pull themselves out of it faster. I think that's been a big problem for Pitt so far.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think it's much more complicated than the fact that their two best offensive players have been taken out of a lot of games this year, have been, kind of neutralized in several games this year. And that can't happen. It sounds pretty simple, but your best players got to be your best players when the games matter.
Agreed. You got to get those guys there. We'll see if Pitt does rebound. They return home for a noon tip-off against Clemson. Clemson, a very good ACC team right now. But hey, if Pitt can get that win, it would go a long way to recovering and getting themselves back on track. We'll keep you up to date here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Please subscribe to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette at post-gazette.com. Get all of our Pitt episodes like Pitt Mailbag and our post-game shows here on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's podcasting channel on your favorite podcasting app, and as well as on the Post-Gazette's YouTube page here on YouTube. We'll see you again Saturday afternoon from the Pete, where we give you our post-game analysis of Pitt versus Clemson. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.